This was unexpected, to say the least. Hey guys, what's up? Aru. Tevat has always been a world of hidden truths, lost civilizations, and forgotten gods. But what if I told you that the biggest secret in Genshin Impact isn't actually buried underground like Aria or the Abyss, but was once right above our heads? And I'm not talking about Celestia either. For centuries, the Moon Sisters' fall was nothing more than a myth that we theorized about, until now. Two recent lore shorts and a shocking web event have finally unveiled the prophecy of the Moon Sisters and the rise of the new Moon Prophecy. And with Natlan revealing the ancient moon remnants, Nod-Krai's primordial power, and even the ice phenomenon that might be connected to one of the moons, as well as Project Stooge's plan to freeze the world, the stage is set for a celestial war and a rebellion that the Tsaritsa has been planning, and it could shake the Vat's very foundations and awaken the heavenly principles. This is everything we know about the Moon Sisters lore, connecting it to every other lore that I could find, and a new moon rising through Cesnaya's plan and war with the world, which is interesting since the day of the event's release is about a new fourth moon, as that day itself, March 10th, is called a new moon. So it's safe to say that moons will be a big part of what will happen not only in Nod-Krai but also in Snezhnaya. Timestamps will be down below as usual, and let's get started. Tevat was once ruled by three celestial goddesses, Aria, Sonnet, and Canon, older than Rex Lapis himself and known as the Three Moon Sisters. Each of them took turns ruling the sky on a silver carriage to meet with Tevat's name for the sun, the morning star, in what's called the Hall of Stars. This ritual rotated 3 times a month, maintaining the natural balance of Tevat's cycles as seen in the animation. These cycles that happen in Tevat are what the event calls the sheltered eternity of the world, the same time frame when angels, or what Tevat called Seelies of the heavens, would walk with the mortals of Tevat, in a time known as the Era of the Primordial One and the Unified Civilization. But then a catastrophe struck, rather a cataclysm struck, ravaging the earth and tearing the heavens loose. In the Moonlit Bamboo Forest animation, the white-haired lady who we can assume as the Celadon Mare calls it a cataclysm or disaster, and the lore about the Seelie Kingdom's fall also marked this same event as a disaster as well. Seelies were once divine envoys who possessed great beauty and wisdom that guided humanity. This catastrophe mirrors the second one who came to Tevat during that same time frame, and with it the same destruction that overturned the heavens. Theory suggests that these events are connected and that it happened 30 days after a Seelie got married to a traveler. The second one who came along with the Great War of Vengeance with the dragons rekindled that exact cataclysm. And once that happened, the three Moon Sisters who had lost their palace and their morning star also lost their lives. The lore books mentions that they turned on themselves and that only one of the Moon Sisters' corpses remained. The eternal moon that fell threw the world into chaos, which is then shown with a great flood, a great deluge. The many regions all over Tevat show signs of flooding in areas where there shouldn't be any water. Inazuma was once an entire region, and Enkanomiya was once on the surface, and now only scattered islands remain, and only Watatsumi Island, which had to be created by Orobashi, carry its people and the history of the unified civilization. Domains like the Court of Flowing Sand and the Violet Court mention how the earth was bigger than the heaven's dome, and that the oceans rose when the mirror in the sky shattered, likely pointing to the fake sky pierced by invaders and when the Great War for Vengeance happened. Tsurumi Island's murals also depict the alignment of 3 moons, similar to the alignment of the moons in the event, and 3 stars can also be found in different murals throughout Tsurumi. The alignment of 3 celestial bodies in space is also known as a syzygy, and the Spiral Abyss was created by an ancient civilization that adjusted its fate to the turning of the abyssal moon. The moment of syzygy can be referred to as when celestial bodies align in space, which means that 2 or more unknown celestial bodies align there during every monthly reset. Now, as the entire world was flooded, Liyue was also included. In the Stone Tablet complications, when Rex Lapis descended from the heavens, he quelled the seas, raised Mount Tianheng, and defeated multiple sea beasts near what would then be called Liyue Harbor. Based on Alice, Juyuan Karsts was a reservoir where it should have been filled with water. A sea god would also be mentioned in Liyue myths that ruled over Lisha during the interim period, which was a peacetime after the Great Deluge. The chasm's similar architecture and fossils of marine life is also evidence that much of Tevat was covered with water. While in Fontaine, there was a city older than the land itself which had an Irminsul tree. This land was protected by a devolved Seelie or golden bee, Sibylla, who was the survivor of the last deluge that swallowed the earth. following the Great Deluge, the iridescent moon shattered and a crimson shadow sank into the abyssal sea. It's worth noting that the Moon Sisters in the animation each broke and shattered, except for the third one when they died. The Eternal being the crescent moon, the iridescent being this thinner moon, and the frost moon as this last hollow moon which encompassed the other two. Something interesting is that when the iridescent moon died in the sky, the reflection of the moon on the sea is what got its crimson color, and not the actual moon itself. We know that there is a crimson moon in Conria and that it was worshipped by the Crimson Moon Dynasty, but there's also the moon in the spiral abyss itself, which is white. My guess is that the real iridescent moon is the one here, while the moon which was in Conria was its crimson shadow, showing a blood moon total lunar eclipse during that time. Arlecchino's red moon was likely the same crimson shadow as well, albeit a more accurate depiction of a total crimson or blood-stained solar eclipse. It's worth noting that there are two different eclipses here, but both are characterized by crimson. So we can assume that the one the Crimson Dynasty saw was Arlecchino's total solar eclipse, which might have only been its shadow during that time, while the moon in the Cataclysm was the actual iridescent moon during its blood moon lunar eclipse, and the moon in the spiral abyss is what its true corpse would look like. Now, two eclipses like these only happen when the sun is present, and the sun that we have might not be real either. I mean, we've seen the animation and just listen to what Nahida has to say.
In the end, I'm just the moon. The real sun is long gone.
That would mean that a real air quotes sun, good or bad, is out there that made Conria see both a blood lunar eclipse and a crimson solar eclipse, one that drove the sages of the kingdom to think that the crimson moon's corpse would become their deity and saw the inverted sky in its reflection. An inverted sky showing the truth might just be the inverted moon in the reflection of the sea when the iridescent moon fell and died. Interestingly, you can see an inverted moon in the game's mechanics like the Welkin moon and the resin, but only the murals in the ancient civilization depict the correct moon alignment in the event. There's also this one in particular angle right here, but I think it's more like a sun because of its brighter rays. There's also one in Natlan right under Shiukoatl, and Natlan's Archon and corresponding dragon is also called the sun. The sun in the Tonatiuh weirdly doesn't set, so maybe that was the real sun that was gone. Correct me if I'm wrong though, because I haven't finished all the world quests yet. Now, for the sake of curiosity, I tried looking at the moon's reflection in the only place that I could, which was the edge of Natlan. And lo and behold, nothing. It wasn't part of the game. At least, not yet. After the two moons fell and shattered, when the frost moon ceased to turn, civilizations collapsed. Now, a moon ceasing to turn means that time within Tevat would have stopped, leaving the world in a standstill, likely with no sun or moon. Getting it out of the way, Snezhnaya has a freezing blizzard phenomenon, the Tsaritsa has this crystallization power to encase things in ice, and Nod-Krai has not only a primordial power that's older than the 7 elements, they've also got statues of a moon deity made by the Frost Moon Scions. It's also where several harbingers are said to have gone into their stronghold, and where an increased amount of abyssal activity has been noticed. So it's safe to say that this place has something, rather a lot, to do with the Frost Moon Sister, and likely some primer lore regarding Snezhnaya and the Tsaritsa in more detail. Whether or not creating statues of a deity separate from the Tsaritsa is forbidden is still unknown, but we might end up with a Cryo Inazuma versus Watatsumi in Nod-Krai and Snezhnaya, which is then followed by the rebellion of Snezhnaya against Celestia. My guess is that the Tsaritsa could be the remaining corpse of the 3 Moon Sisters, alive or dead. Interestingly, in the book Moonlit Bamboo Forest, wolves are said to be children of the moons. These wolves mourn the death of their mothers with each passing moon and its cold light, meaning the new moon that we see here might just be the pale frost moon, a non-functioning moon reused and made into a new moon. This could be why Boreas has both Cryo and Anemo as well. So Anemo might be the other element of the Moon Sisters. And based on the animation, the third sister might just be Electro. The reason being, her color is purple. This could explain why Razor, a person who lives among the wolves, has the same element. Finally, we have A and the Raiden Shogun, who says that eternity is the closest to the heavenly principles. But it could also explain why Abyss-related attacks are also Electro. Not the Abyss order, just pure Abyss. The book mentions those who live among the wolves are called morning stars and grieving stars. The only wolves that we know of right now are rift wolves, and one of them is Electro. This could also explain why majority of the rift wolves are located on Sarumi Island. Not only is it an island that they can inhabit, but it's also where the murals of the Moon Sisters are. But the people who dwell in the abyss, like the Narwhal, Child's Foul Legacy, and maybe even Skirk's powers might stem from the power of a fallen Moon Sister, Cryo, Anemo, and Electro. So maybe we'll see both Skirk and a Cryo/Anemo wolves in Snezhnaya or even Nod-Krai. Now as for the Golden Wolf Lord, if you were wondering, the Solar Chariot or the Sun works hand in hand with the Moon Cycle too. But then again, the Narwhal also has fire attacks. So maybe these elemental attacks aren't elemental at all. Outer space is cold and the sun is hot, celestial bodies are technically geo, and maybe we've got something like electricity as well. Regarding Nod-Krai, it's likely that Dottore and the other Harbingers would be there, not only to oversee the primordial power and the rise of the new moon, but also to move closer to the Gnosis. The reason why is that Capitano, the first Harbinger, couldn't beat Mawika in her weakened state. And now that Natlan is fixed, Mawika's power is technically back to full potential. So it would probably need more than one Harbinger to take the Gnosis from her by force, since Natlan specifically needs the Gnosis to stave off the abyss. And there's also Project Stuja, which means bitter cold, and it's no coincidence that all the related Harbingers are being called back. Arlecchino's possible connection to the iridescent moon's power, Tartalia's foul legacy, and Skirk, Piero and Capitano being from Conria. These are all really good pieces that the Tsaritsa can leverage in her war with Celestia. And if I may be so bold to assume, she might even be a moon sister as well. Cross moon deities, ice phenomena, primordial powers, and theories about the Tsaritsa being the god of love is honestly close to what happened to the moon sisters lore. And we all know that Archons can of course fake their deaths just like Zhongli did. So what if the moon sister ceasing to turn is just the frost moon leaving her job after losing her love and sibling? I mean, anyone would, honestly. There's also the fact that Archons can be the original and not the original at the same time. Some Archons still had a way to keep their thrones to themselves through their own means. So far, only Focalor and Venti gave their power or authority to another being that isn't explicitly themselves. And if we're getting Frost Moon deity statues way before Snezhnaya, it may at least hint at her relations with the Tsaritsa. The world, no longer sheltered by eternity, marches towards its final breath. Yet from the ashes, a new moon rises, its ascent spinning the wheel of fate anew. The figure here we don't know yet, but the hooded form is similar to Inazuma's depiction of the three moon sisters. But the clothing they wear is similar to Archon robes. Now, I'm not saying that an Archon is a moon sister, but if we're getting close to moons right before a new region releases, then it's possible that the Tsaritsa is gonna be the new moon sister or has some really huge connections to the Frost Moon. Regardless of who the Tsaritsa is gonna be, her element alone connects her to the last moon sister. And I don't want to talk about the Pale Princess and the Six Pygmies before the special program, but a Pale Princess, a Night Queen, as well as the people of the moonlit world is very much close in terms of naming conventions. But that's not all, because doesn't this just sound like Tevant being on its last legs, no longer protected by the Moon Sisters' care and eternity and the revival of a fallen moon? This isn't just to rekindle the rule of the Moon Sisters, but it's also to steer the world in its natural order.
In the perpetual meantime of a sheltered eternity, most are content to live and not to dream. But in the hidden corners where the god's gaze does not fall, there are those who dream of dreaming.
This line right here in itself, I think, is a chapter in the game that we need to go through before Conria. This means that those who dream of dreaming are about to get their wish fulfilled, a wish for a new moon. Tevant currently is in a perpetual meantime of a sheltered eternity. In the words of Ayato, stasis is also a form of eternity. But we also have what Nahida has to say.
Everything in this world runs in a loop. As for the truth, that's on you to find out. So no matter how strange or spooky things may look on the surface, maybe all they point to in the end is a small and simple secret.
Currently, this means that we're in an eternal standstill as the real moons do not function and the world slowly marches to its inevitable end. a recurring samsara, and a world of illusions.
History does not change easily, but human hearts can. Believe your own eyes. Only that which you see is true. What is unseen is but an illusion.
The creation of the Gnosis, the 7 divine thrones, the archons, and even the visions that we have, and honestly even fate and constellations, are only a temporary solution, a creation to stave off the fate of this world thousands of years later, as mentioned in the lore about visions and the true function of allogenes. Neuvillette also speaks of the true function of fate and visions in his lore, while Skirk speaks of the true form of all things outside of our fake skydome and after death.
To live in itself is a blessing. But once a person dies, the bonds he once had with this world shall all turn to curses.
This fake world that we live in is also made by a fake system that harvests fates to keep the world from dying, kept in check and sustained by an unknown god that ensures this temporary solution keeps going. Those who follow the tides still sing and pray, for a new moon is set to rise. Those who dream of dreaming are the ones who pursue the return of the moons, not through some heretical ritual or astrological heresy, but to return the cycle of the sun and moon back to its original order, so that our final resting place will be
the entirety of the old world.
Piero himself said so when the Tsaritsa wished for the same, creating a new moon from the ashes of what once was a fallen moon and spinning the wheel of fate anew. This is likely the final plan of the Fatui and the end result of the Project Stuja, giving the fate of the world back to itself and letting the wheel of fate spin once again. This creation of a new moon takes us back to the Simulanka event, which was a one-to-one allegorical telling of Tevat's story. In the event, we were tasked to repair a lighthouse that guides venturers back from other worlds, and instead of fixing that fallen lighthouse, we instead placed it as an offering to the 3 goddesses. During the quest, the lighthouse was destroyed by Durin, portraying the Dragon King Nibelung when he returned with forbidden knowledge and started the Great War of Vengeance. Esnoir, who guides us in the quest, calls the lamp like it's a living being, while the lamp was said to be unmoving but still shining, even with the entire village working to repair it, just like the fallen Moon Sister corpse that ceased to turn but remained with pale light. The light of the lamp was supposed to shine on the most distant places and guide venturers back to Simulanka. These venturers are those that dream of dreaming, people who go to the ends of the skies, willing to leave everything and travel to where the stars set. The lamp was said to guide venturers even in the darkest places where light was so dim.
But yet, dim as they may be, they can still illuminate the path ahead.
Offering parts of the dragon, which is likely Durin in this context, and then making a wish to the goddess of fate. Whoever the goddess of fate equates to for the 4 shades and the primordial one, that's likely the one we'll make the offering to. But because we've seen Renova momentarily in Netland, as well as the events about death in Liyue and nightmares in Inazuma, Renova will likely be the one to decide whether or not a fallen moon sister should be revived, or if a new moon from the corpse of a dead one is allowed. Beneath the shadow of moonlight, something stirs, unseen yet inevitable. Not only does this panel move us into outer space, these are likely going to be about the real stars and skies outside of the fake world. Real stars that we can see from the torn hole in Natlan, and real celestial bodies like the ancient moon's remnants. The entire panel also looks like a solar system with possible other planets of other worlds, maybe? It's a pretty weird looking solar system though. The moon sister Syzygy here, multiple planets orbiting a single line, there's a thing here spinning which should likely have a planet, and there's also no sun, which is what the planets should be orbiting around, but they still are. Nahida's words about there not being a real sun is more prevalent now, but what are we orbiting around exactly? My only guess is that we're orbiting around time. Not only does it look like a solar system, but it also looks like a clock. The same clock at the beginning of the event, the one that we use in game, and some of the artifacts that we get. But if it's a clock, then these circles are events kept in moments, which not only would point us to Astaroth, the god of time, time, ergo Venti, these events would likely tell us more about the story of the Moon Sisters and in what order. The event lasts from March 10th to May 10th, which is 2 months of lore dropping in a web event until we reach Nesnaya or Nod-Krai. The next panel is a photo of this pillar that has a similar pattern as the lamp from Simulanka. This is where the previous line from the other panel makes more sense. Now if this is the new moon that was going to set the real fate of the world, then we're quite close, since the pillar has almost the same patterns as the lamp in Simulanka, along with the similar characteristics of the lamp and the frost moon. Now if you don't mind me getting cracked up more than I already am, this javelin-shaped object where the glowing moon-like object is might just be the same javelins that the ancient dragons used, a space shuttle designed to carry the new moon up and destroy the fake sky. Granted, we don't know what the full image is yet, and there's still around 11 lore bits that we'll get from this panel, but it does fit well with how crazy and full of misfits the Fatui is, the advanced technology that they possess, and how familiar they are with the folly of their actions. Because on this chessboard, checkmate is not where the game ends. They plan to fulfill whatever mission they have even after they've lost and fallen. And the person to help with that plan to create the new fate of the Vat is the only person who can change fate. If you notice, there's a little pop-up emblem of both the Syzygy Moon Sisters and our constellation star next to our UID, and it only pops up during these 3 panels. The panels align perfectly since we're currently in the point where this is about to happen. Our intro cutscene was also characterized with the same star shape, and it's all over our character designs. The star motif scarf, the constellation having a star and a crescent shape, our outfits being called the Rising Star, our original swords, as well as our wings. So a star from another world helping to change the Vat's fate with a new moon is likely how Nod-Krai is going to happen and how we're going to reach Celestia and the Abyss. Not only that, our little lavender melon guide, Paimon, also has the same 4-pointed star. Whether or not she's a moon sister is still unknown, but she does act weirdly when we talked about the 3 Seelies in Chenyu Vale. Mona can't seem to find her threads of fate whenever she tries, but the Melusine can see a long thread stretching above the sky, followed by calling the Traveler a monster that looks like it could swallow the whole world in a single bite. While Kazuha mentions that we both give off the essence of stars, so she indeed might be a sister of fate or a moon sister. She also has a Triquetra symbol, which might just be the symbol for the 3 moon sisters long ago. She might also be a moon sister that lost her power and became Paimon, just like Marcosius becoming Goba, but that's even more obscure to talk about. Now, as for the Abyss, rather the Abyss Order, it should be noted that the abyssal activity is said to have increased recently in Nod-Krai. This is not a coincidence as well, since abyssal monsters are drawn to different energies, but it's also likely orchestrated by the Abyss Order. There are a lot of opportunities that the Abyss Order can leverage from here, since their eras and powers are connected to moons, that is, moon corpses and sun corpses. The remnant heretics of the Crimson Moon Dynasty can make it so that the Crimson Moon comes back instead, providing more of Arlecchino's past and a clearer story, while the people of the Black Sun Dynasty, like the Abyss Order, can use the Loom of Fate, implanting memories to manipulate what happens there, or even constructing a completely new ley line. But the Loom of Fate functions through the power of the Abyss, and is said to reshape the world and rewrite fate, while the new moon hints at spinning an already existing Wheel of Fate again, likely the original Wheel of Fate. But the Loom of Fate itself is also likely orchestrated by the sinner, Vedrfolnir, which was said to be the reason the Cataclysm happened in the first place, which is also weird because the Abyss Order is basically using a pet project of someone who was the reason Khaenri'ah was destroyed, and is more likely to corrupt the world even more than it already has. The Abyss sibling themselves also question whether what they did was right or wrong, and that it was their original goal before the heavenly principles awakened. And although many likely heretical events didn't awaken them, Renova still follows her rules in some capacity. So it's safe to say that the heavenly principles are still there, but just not as prevalent. I mean, why else would Renova follow her rule? As for the 5 sinners, I honestly think they wouldn't mind a new moon sister, since they themselves are already part of what we can call outer space, and the narwhal's description confirms that there are other things outside of Tevat, unless this really is a solar system and the moon affects other planets. However, that's a big if in the game's lore and future development. The sinners are also on the more chaotic side of morality, since Rhine-Daughter is a Hexencircle witch too, so their moral alignment in the story is still unclear, and what they do as well as the motives behind that is very much unknown. But there are 2 sinners that could pop up here. Vedrfolnir coming to claim his little completed pet project, and Sertology taking interest in the new moon that's about to rise. Vedrfolnir might not come until another Dainsif quest since they're siblings, but if Skirk is released in Nod-Krai, then it's because Sertology, her master, told her to go there and do something for him, or that Skirk herself plans to help us in some way. Unless Child is able to convince both Skirk and Sertology to either help with the new moon or defeat some sort of abyss creature from the abyss, which is unlikely considering how Skirk treats Child. The final panel says, "People of the moonlit world, please await the turning of the moon, for it will bring new revelations." Apart from the line hinting at a new chapter of the Pale Princess and the 6 Pygmies, it also hints at the turning of a new moon cycle, which technically hasn't happened in lore. If you've been listening to me about the Spiral Abyss and the moment of Syzygy, we'll likely see the moons turning in the Spiral Abyss and maybe even find the 3 moons or a new moon aligning in a similar way to the event. This might also hint that we'll get an expansion on the Spiral Abyss lore and maybe even a new floor, which is likely that top tower at the end of floor 12. But in this panel, we can also see the stars orbiting something just out of frame. Now, I could talk about how the top of the Spiral Abyss is the same as this black hole where the stars and balls orbit, as well as the sun itself turning black just like the Black Sun Dynasty of Conria, but that's a little too far out for my liking, and as if I haven't been raving like a madman already. But that's basically my thoughts and everything I wanted to talk about regarding the latest Moon Sister event. This was a lot to process in 2 days, and I'm sure there's a huge plot hole in there too, but I'm sure I've nailed it down quite well. Anyways, the latest program is almost here as well, based on how Hoyo usually schedules things. We'll see how much we've gotten right or wrong, but that's gonna be it from me. I'll see you guys on the next video, yeah? As always, like and comment if you enjoyed, subscribe and hit the bell for more of my ramblings, and stay mad theorists. Bye!